Detective Claire Mason was not the type to believe in ghost stories. A seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving cold cases, she had seen her fair share of horrors. But nothing could prepare her for what she was about to face when she received an unmarked envelope on her desk one rainy afternoon. The envelope was sealed with no return address. Inside was a single DVD with the words, "Watch Me," scrawled hastily in red ink. The handwriting was erratic, as if written in a state of panic. There was no note, no explanation, just the DVD. Her curiosity piqued, Claire inserted the disc into her laptop. At first, the screen remained black, the sound of static hissing through her speakers. Then, it flickered to life with a series of strange, disjointed images: a dilapidated well in the middle of a dark forest, a figure wrapped in shadows crawling out from its depths, and a flicker of a pale face with hollow, black eyes staring directly at the camera. The final image was of a countdown timer that started at 7 days before the screen went black. As the video ended, Claire's laptop froze, the screen glitching. When it finally rebooted, the DVD had ejected itself. Shaking her head at what she assumed was some kind of prank, she tossed the disc aside, ready to move on with her day. But something about those eyes stuck with her. There was a depth of malice there that made her uneasy. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. The rain tapped against her windows like skeletal fingers, and the shadows in her apartment seemed to move of their own accord. As she lay in bed, her mind replayed the images from the video, the hollow eyes of that figure haunting her every thought. Just as she began to drift off, her phone rang. Groggy and disoriented, she reached for it, checking the caller ID. It was an unknown number. Frowning, she answered. There was nothing but static at first, then a voice, distorted and low, like a whisper from beyond the grave. 7 days, it said, before the line went dead. A chill ran down Claire's spine. It was just a prank, she told herself, probably some tech-savvy hacker trying to mess with her. But deep down, a seed of fear had taken root. She tried to shake it off and went back to sleep, but her dreams were filled with images of the well and that figure crawling towards her. The next morning, Claire arrived at the precinct early, hoping to put the strange events behind her. But as soon as she walked into her office, her heart sank. Her laptop, which she had shut down the night before, was on, the cursed video playing on loop. She quickly shut it off, her hands trembling. Something wasn't right. Determined to get to the bottom of this, she ran a search on her computer, trying to find the origin of the DVD. But no matter how hard she tried, it was as if the video had erased all traces of itself from her system. Her partner, Detective Mark Riley, noticed her distress. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he joked, but his smile faded when he saw the seriousness in her eyes. She explained everything: the DVD, the phone call, the images that haunted her dreams. Mark listened, his expression growing grim. "You're not the first," he said quietly. "There's been a string of unexplained deaths linked to a cursed video. Every victim watched it, and exactly 7 days later, they died." Claire stared at him, disbelief mingling with dread. "That's impossible, it's just a video," she insisted, but even as she said it, she remembered those hollow eyes and the voice that had whispered to her. Mark pulled out a file from his drawer, laying out photos of victims, each one twisted in terror, their eyes wide open as if they had seen something beyond comprehension. "No one knows where it came from," he continued. "But everyone who watches it gets the call. 7 days. And then," he left the sentence hanging. Claire refused to accept it. She was a detective, bound by logic and reason. But as the days passed, strange things began to happen. On the 2nd day, she started hearing whispers in her apartment. On the 3rd day, every electronic device she owned began to glitch, displaying cryptic messages that vanished before she could read them. By the 4th day, She was seeing shadows move in her peripheral vision, only to disappear when she turned to face them. On the 5th day, she began to feel a constant chill in the air, as if something was watching her from the darkness. Desperate, Claire turned to Mark for help. Together, they tracked down the last known owner of the cursed DVD, a reclusive film collector named Victor Hargrove. When they arrived at his home, they found it abandoned, covered in dust and cobwebs, as if no one had lived there for years. In the attic, they discovered a collection of old tapes and cursed relics. But more disturbingly, they found Victor's journal. It detailed how he had come into possession of the cursed video and the horror that followed. According to the journal, the video was tied to a vengeful spirit, a woman who had been thrown into a well over a century ago, her soul trapped within the footage. As they read through the journal, the lights flickered, and the air grew cold. Claire felt a presence behind her, a soft whispering that sent shivers down her spine. She turned, but there was nothing there, just the shadows stretching across the walls. On the 6th day, Claire was at her breaking point. She hadn't slept in days, her eyes hollow and sunken. The whispers had grown louder, and she could no longer tell if they were real or just in her head. Mark, determined to save his partner, tried to destroy the DVD, smashing it to pieces. But as soon as he did, his phone rang. It was the same static-laden voice Claire had heard before. "You can't escape her." With only 1 day left, Claire returned to the mansion where Victor had found the cursed footage. She was convinced that the only way to break the curse was to confront the spirit herself. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a growing sense of dread, she descended into the dark basement where the well was rumored to be. The air was thick with decay as she pushed open the creaking door to the cellar. The smell of damp earth and rot assaulted her senses. In the center of the room was the well, just like in the video. As she approached it, the whispers grew into a cacophony, filling her mind with screams and cries. With trembling hands, she leaned over the edge, shining her flashlight into the darkness below. That's when she saw it, a pair of hollow eyes staring back at her, filled with rage and sorrow. The spirit's face was twisted and contorted, her hair hanging in wet, matted strands. Before Claire could react, the spirit lunged from the well, grabbing her with cold, skeletal hands. The touch sent a jolt of icy terror through her, freezing her in place. "You watched," the spirit hissed, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Now, you must pay." In a desperate bid for survival, Claire pulled out a lighter from her pocket and ignited it. The spirit recoiled, shrieking as the flames illuminated the darkness. But it was only a temporary reprieve. The spirit's grip tightened, dragging her closer to the well. As the countdown reached 0 in her mind, Claire did the only thing she could think of. She threw the lighter into the well, the flames catching on the old, dry wood. The spirit screamed, a sound that pierced through Claire's very soul, before dissolving into a cloud of ash. The well erupted into flames, the cursed power finally breaking. The whispers ceased, and the oppressive darkness lifted. Claire stumbled back, gasping for air, her heart pounding in her chest. Exhausted and trembling, she made her way out of the mansion just as dawn broke. The curse had been lifted, but she would never forget those hollow eyes staring back at her. As she drove away, her phone rang one last time. She hesitated, then answered it. All she heard was a faint whisper, "I'll be back."